and welcome to GC Truth News. We have a very important guest. Thank you very much for coming on, Dr. Jim FETZER. Thank you for being here. Glad you're doing well. Let's hear what all the news are, updates, crazy stuff. It's September 7th, 2023. Here we are. Thank you.
Well, we have some very astonishing developments domestic-wise. James Clapper, whom I have held in low regard, former head of the NSA, a guy I regarded as a big-time liar, is coming clean about a whole lot of dirty tricks going on. In fact, that the DOJ and FBI even had a group called the Dirty Tricks Group that were seeking to defeat Donald Trump, keep him from assuming the presidency. Rod Rosenstein was a key player. He's a DOJ attorney, a U.S. attorney. He apparently quite a brilliant guy, according to Clapper. But their group include Paul Ryan, Mitt Romney, Mike Pence, John Roberts, I'm sorry to say, the Chief Justice of the United States. You can find a Clapper on my Twitter, @JimFetzer, and elsewhere. Very, very serious stuff. Turns out they were finding ways to manipulate judges across the land by planting child porn on their computers, for example. That Mike Pence was controllable because he himself is gay. Interestingly, my wife had nailed him over 10 years ago when the thought hadn't even crossed my mind. But the fact is, I'm profoundly troubled that John Roberts is a part of this crowd, because I think it may explain why the Texas lawsuit contesting the 2020 election, which was completely brilliant, was rejected for consideration by the Supreme Court. I suspect it was Roberts who made that rejection. And my very own case before the Supreme Court, which State of the Nation had declared to be perhaps the single most important case to come before the Supreme Court in our lifetime, because it focused on our right to a trial by jury and on equal justice under the law, was also rejected. I am quite distraught. Everyone needs to watch this. As though there couldn't be a bigger revelation, Tucker Carlson has now interviewed Larry Sinclair, who has insisted for over a decade that he smoked crack cocaine, or actually he was snorting while Obama was smoking, and he had given Obama oral sex in a limousine in Chicago. He didn't have any idea who Obama was. He come into town from Colorado, got a limo driver, a 5-star limo, and told him he wanted a party, made it very explicit what he wanted, and the guy took him right to Barack Obama. He gave Obama $250 to buy cocaine. Then they drove in the limo while Obama pulled out his crack pipe and began smoking, and Larry Sinclair gave him oral sex. They took him to his hotel, dropped him off at a Comfort Inn, and the next morning a knock on the door, and Obama was there wanting a second round, very similar, snorting coke, smoking his pipe, while Larry Sinclair gave him oral sex. And he didn't know who he was until the guy walked out on the stage of the Democratic convention, and he just laughed his head off, couldn't believe it, told friends that he'd given this guy blowjobs, 2 blowjobs, and here he was running for president of the United States. Something very curious about the interview, and Tucker confirms how this all is totally credible, how Larry Sinclair has signed an affidavit. I don't know if he's undergone, but he's willing to undergo lie detector tests. He's totally calm, collected about it. But how they think Obama's married to a woman. I mean, Sinclair said he had heard rumors at the time that they had marital problems, and Michelle was even threatening to divorce him. But neither he nor Tucker seems to understand that Michelle Obama is Michael LaVaughn Robinson, a man with breast implants. I have all kinds of evidence, photographs before getting the breast implants, no boobs, photographs after letting his beard grow when his husband is no longer president, coming out of a building, scratching his balls, dancing on Ellen DeGeneres, where you can see he obviously has something going on there in his pants, photographs illustrating he has a package most women do not have. Now, something very fascinating about the interview is how Larry Sinclair sought to explain to the Democrat Party about Obama so they would know. But of course, it's pretty clear they already did know. Reached out to David Axelrod, for example, wound up being contacted by a fellow named, I believe, Larry Young, who is from Reverend Wright's church. And Larry Young told him that they were not going to acknowledge the cocaine or the sex. Turns out Larry Young is later found dead, shot 5 times. That even his mother believes it was to protect Barack Obama. And as I've elsewhere reported, other members of the Reverend Wright Church with whom Barack appears to have had sex have also died. And all this, in my opinion, makes it all the more plausible that Tafari Campbell, who was, of course, the chef on Martha's Vineyard, who died under such mysterious circumstances, reportedly drowning in 3 feet of water when he was actually a good swimmer and could have saved himself by standing up, where he turns out to have had a blow behind the head, where they lost his blood sample, where Obama the following day showed up with a bandaged hand and a black eye. I believe Barack himself killed Tafari Campbell during a disagreement, a fallout during gay sex, very much like Paul Pelosi got into a ruckus with his friend David and was hit over the head with a hammer, which I believe was a pink dildo you can find on Amazon for $95 that's shaped like a hammer with the batteries installed. Because it's vibrating, it could certainly bring about a skull fracture. And where Paul Pelosi also cut his hand by breaking out the glass at the back to try to feign there had been a break-in when there had been no break-in. I think this is all very, very serious. And I do think it's going to greatly complicate the Democrat desire to run Michelle either in the presidential or the vice presidential slot. It's pretty damn clear they've got a big problem here. Joe Biden, obviously universally despised, can't be the candidate again because his actual poll ratings are below 10%. His favorability, the lowest of any American president in history. Kamala Harris, widely regarded as the worst vice president in history. Neither of them can be plausible to explain why the Democrats win again in 2024 through manipulation of the outcome, and where we know now that Barack Obama, before he left office, had our election system classified as critical infrastructure and encompassed within what's known as FirstNet, that gave the government the ability to monitor and even change the vote down to the precinct level. So they do that. They have the Biden, they claimed he was a unity candidate. Anyone who's actually studied the election, you can see very obviously the American people had no enthusiasm for either the Democrat presidential or vice presidential nominee. For example, the day before the election in Phoenix, Biden and Harris made a joint appearance, and no one came. No one, zilch. Not a single American Arizonan turned out to see Biden and Harris, and yet they claim he got 81 million votes, more than anyone else in the world. It was done via FirstNet, via Dominion voting machines, via drop boxes, via mail-in ballots, via truckloads of fake votes. I mean, it's all disgusting. They're going to try to do it again, but they know no one would believe it if Biden were on the ticket. They want to bring in Gavin Newsom, I'm convinced, governor of California. He's a scumbag. He's done great damage to California. But then again, that's what they want. They want to do great damage to America. And it's astounding how in less than 3 years they've done it by opening borders, undermining our financial system, running up trillions in debt, creating lawlessness across the land. And where we have an additional report now that Biden family members have acknowledged that Joe died years ago. I believe it was 2017, because that's the last I've been able to find videos or images that appear to be the real Joe from Delaware. But we have the granddaughter now acknowledging that he died, but the family liked being active in politics and that they wanted to keep their hand in. So we've had imposters playing the role. Now, turning to Ukraine, the war is all but over. Ukrainians are surrendering, putting up white flags, giving up their tanks a whole bit before they're blown to bits. Others are leaving, refusing to go to the battlefront. They've lost 70,000 troops already, more than we lost in the whole entirety of our engagement in Vietnam. Zelensky's now recruiting. I mean, talk about scraping the bottom of the barrel. HIV positive people with neurodegenerative diseases and mental illness. No surprise there. He's absolutely desperate. The counteroffensive, of course, has fallen completely flat. There's talk in Russia now about hitting targets in the United States because nuclear war has become inevitable. The United States has provoked this. We've abandoned the doctrine of mutually assured destruction, which created a stability from the end of World War II until the Biden admin came out and decided to swap out mutually assured destruction for a first strike agenda. And where now? We know what's happened in Maui was the use of directed energy weapons. There's just a mountain of evidence for it. I have videos showing the carcass of a dog, for example, that just looked like a perfectly shaped dog, except it was just ash or charcoal, compared to video of people who died from directed energy weapon. And again, they're perfectly shaped people, except they're just ash or charcoal. And where a man who calls himself a forensic arborist, which means he's an expert on trees, has discovered at least 35 fires that were done by directed energy weaponry. And when he looks at Maui, he explains the tell is the palm trees, which turn out to be highly flammable, but remain unsinged, or he's convinced they're actually dead because the moisture has been sucked out of them. But where it's been done with microwave energy weapons, and where the surgical precision with which the homes were destroyed and others were spared indicates that it was all mapped by satellite, so they had an exact specification of the coordinates of each property to be destroyed that could then be executed by a program run by a computer using a satellite. Now, a confidant of mine who's an expert in geopolitics has reminded me that if you go back to the James Bond film Diamonds Are Forever, that shows the use of a laser to take out a missile in a silo. Russia has now just announced that its Satan II is now combat ready, on duty, but they have to be very, very worried, seeing what the U.S. can do with these directed energy weapons, that they might plan to take out their Satan IIs in the silo. These are awesome weapons. They have 15 independently targetable warheads. A single Satan II could take out all of France, just one missile. So I think this is actually destabilizing the whole idea of cashing in mutually assured destruction, also known, of course, as MAD, for a first strike policy, is probably going to lead to the incineration of maybe half of America and most of Europe. I predict it is going to happen. We're going to lose 100 to 200 million people in the first hour or less. It's going to be catastrophic for the world, and the West has brought it upon itself. There are those in Washington who believe that the only way for Biden to evade impeachment is if he begins a war with Russia. Presumably, that's contemplating a rally around the flag result, because in past wars, the American people have rallied around the president, even if he were regarded as a bumbling idiot, as was W after 9/11. W's support in the polls went up to 85%. What most people don't know is it was a Biden admin in collusion with Bibi Netanyahu in Israel that brought us 9/11, where Dick Cheney was actually the executive director on the ground in a bunker beneath the White House, as I've elsewhere documented. If you want to get a video overview, go to my BitChute channel, Jim Fetzer, and watch 9/11 special, 11 September 2021, which I dedicated to Robert David Steele. Meanwhile, because Niger is showing independence because they had a coup in Niger by the military that actually was a populist coup to benefit the people, and where several other African nations are supportive of Niger, the U.S. is now planning assassination plots against Niger's new leadership. This is what America has become. Meanwhile, the CIA is hiring domestic Nazis for terror operations at home and abroad that are going to be blamed upon Trump supporters and conservatives as domestic terrorists. Moreover, the Border Patrol is now revealing that Biden is giving $2,200 of taxpayer money per illegal immigrant family each month, plus a plane ticket, housing, food, free medical services. Just completely disgusting beyond words. They don't care about America's borders. They care about Ukraine's borders, but it's a lost cause. Much of this focus on Ukraine, by the way, is driven by the fact that Congress, our Congress, is Israeli-occupied territory. As Cynthia McKinney revealed back in 2011, new members of Congress are asked to sign a pledge to put the interests of Israel ahead of even that of the United States. And it may be 7 or 8 years ago, a friend of mine asked, did I know how many members of the then current Congress had declined to sign the pledge? And when I admitted he did not, he held up one finger and one hand, exactly one. And the reason the U.S. is so committed to Ukraine is because Israel wants Ukraine to be the new Israel. most of the present-day occupants of Ukraine are not descendants of the tribe of Judah. They're not even Semites. They are Khazarians. For Khazaria is the now modern-day Ukraine, and they want to reclaim it to be the new Israel. That's why all of this is going on with such intensity and dedication. Have no doubt about it. Meanwhile, Biden's immigration crisis is sparking major revolt among blue state Democrats because they don't know what to do with the migrants. Why the hell anyone wouldn't have seen this coming is beyond me. But it's getting out of hand. We even have Eric Adams, the mayor of New York City, asking New Yorkers to take migrants into their homes. But can you imagine taking someone of a strange culture background who could be a murderer, a rapist, into your home? It would be idiotic. So I think that the Democrat Party has exposed itself as the most corrupt, the most un-American, the most anti-democratic in all of our history as a nation. Moreover, now we have several Republican candidates who are going to qualify for the second round of debates. Trump, of course, finessed the debate. He instead did an interview with Tucker Carlson that drew some 265 views. 265 million views. Remember, the population of the United States is around 330 million. 265 million views of Tucker, where the debate itself only drew 12.5, which is 50% of what it had drawn when Trump had participated back in 2015. So it's really turned out to be a triumph for Trump, including the mugshots and all the indictments, because each time he's been indicted, his poll numbers have gone up. The mugshot turns out to have been especially telling, including in Black communities, because now they're viewing Trump as a brother who's been subject to abuse by the man, by law enforcement, as so many of them have been abused by the man. And the support for Trump in the Black community is skyrocketing. And it's also the case that because of their promotion for gays and lesbians and transgender this and that, Latinos are very put off. They're highly traditional. Most of them are Catholic. They don't buy any of this. They believe in traditional family values. Just more reasons why the Democrats are going to have to steal the election. But they can't get away with it using Biden or Harris. Meanwhile, the conditions to qualify for the second debate are more strict than for the first. Those who have qualified include President Trump, former U.S. Ambassador to UN and South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy, and former Vice President Pence. Given these revelations coming from James Clapper, I do not expect Pence to have a very long shelf life here as a candidate. He is going to be savaged by the other candidates for what Clapper has revealed. Ramaswamy, very impressive on the surface, turns out to be a World Economic Forum New World leader, that he has a sordid past, that he came from a hedge fund. And I got to say, I've been forced to conclude that he's actually a plant. I like everything he says. He's very articulate. I like his gestures. I like his manner. But that falls in the tradition of con men. And I'm really sorry to say that I'm now, given the more recent evidence I've seen about him, been forced to conclude that Ramaswamy is a decoy. That he's there in the hope he might gain power, but he's actually up to sabotaging the conservative agenda. Sad to say. Meanwhile, we've had an additional major revelation. They asked me to lie about President Trump in order to indict him. Enrico Tiero exclusively told the Gateway pundit, I told them to pound sand. And because I refused to lie about President Trump, it cost me 22 years of my life. Tiero opened up to the Gateway pundit after he was sentenced to decades in prison by the dishonorable Judge Kelly on Tuesday. He told us prosecutors in the Department of Justice attempted to coerce him into signing a false statement that would implicate President Trump by swearing that through several degrees of separation and connection, Tiero had communicated with Trump regarding plans for January 6th. Everything they wanted me to say was fabricated, said Tiero. It was a lie. I refuse to sign their work of fiction. I want to be unequivocally clear. I have no connection to President Trump or anyone in his family whatsoever. The connection simply just does not exist and never did. They literally wanted me to lie. The January 6th Unselect Committee, Biden regime, and the Department of Injustice have been salivating like rabid dogs since they wanted to find a way to connect Trump to the Proud Boys. Even after their alleged illegal tactics, they failed to make the connection because it does not exist. Their January 6th indictment of President Trump make no mention of the Proud Boys, though they tried for years to fabricate one. We have a judge skeptical that the trial in Georgia could take 4 months. But you got to bear in mind, these trials are timed to interfere with the election. That's their whole purpose. You're talking about a trial, a criminal trial, where the defendant is normally expected to be physically present in court. If they had a trial, they could drag out for 4 months. That's 4 months Donald Trump is not out on the campaign, rallying support, denouncing his opponents, and cruising to an effortless victory. There's no doubt whatsoever, even if Trump were convicted of crimes, it's legally constitutional for him to continue to serve in office and, save for manipulating the outcome of the vote, as I've already been characterizing, which was really carried out with a flourish, meaning made possible to the extreme level of being able to monitor and manipulate the vote all the way down to the precinct level by Barack Obama. Trump's a shoo-in to be the next president of the United States, but for how they are going to attempt to steal the election again. So there you have an update of the latest from the front on the scene, both international and domestic. Your thoughts?
Whew, amazing. Thank you very much, Jim. Well, it's it's a lot to unpack, and all I can say is hopefully the good guys are winning and things are turning around, because all these news, it seems like people are waking up, things are turning around, but it seems like the cabal, it's their last breath. They're trying to do all these crazy things, and it's nuts. It's nuts to think what's going on, and you could look at all the specific things. One thing, there's a million things to point out. Just one small thing I want to add as well is just the fact that I get all these commercials, all these advertisements, and all these commercials for this company called Temu. I don't know if you've heard of it.
I'm
And
not sure I have. Tell me more.
it's like this. It's like this Chinese company, right? It's this Chinese company, and we're getting bombarded with advertisements and commercials for this Chinese company called Temu. And the thing I don't understand is, everything is made in China here in America, and all these people complain about all these problems with China, and yet we're buying all this stuff from them, and they're they're just selling this country off with the highest person with the most money, and they're just selling. So my point being is that this Temu stuff, this company is like spyware, and it's destroying a lot of the stuff that's going on in America, and meanwhile, China is banning iPhones and banning American stuff over in China. And yet here in America, we're having all this Chinese crap here, all this Chinese products, all this I mean, they're pouring billions of dollars. God knows how much money they're pouring into and this Temu stuff, and it's all just spyware and this and that. So my point is it's just amazing. I'm just preaching to the choir here, but it's just sad and amazing to see what our own Congress people are doing, and none of them care about any of this stuff. They're not holding any of this stuff accountable, and that's just one small piece of the million-piece puzzle. A billion. It's like so much stuff going on.
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, we got a handful of valiant patriots: Jim Jordan, Matt Gaetz, Marjorie Taylor Greene, a handful of others who are really champions of America. And then we got a whole lot on both sides of the aisle. Notice you go back to James Clapper. He was revealing they didn't like Trump because he hadn't paid his dues. In other words, they'd gone through various electoral processes and all that other stuff. And here he comes in from the outside to be a candidate for and succeed to become president of the United States. They resented him for that. And each of them, as Clapper explains, whether it was Mitt Romney or Paul Ryan or Rod Rosenstein himself, thought that they were the perfect vice presidential candidate to go along with Mike Pence, who thought that Trump had stolen the presidential nomination away from him. Mike Pence, I'm sorry to say, along with the others named, not quite in the same class as Barack Obama, but will all be regarded as traitors to the United States. And I'm very glad Clapper has spoken out. You can find several of these, including Tucker's interview with Larry Sinclair, on my Twitter account @JimFetzer. Very, very important. Everyone watch and learn this totally credible source exposing the extent to which the Democratic Party has been willing to sink to depths of corruption and deception unprecedented in American history. Outrageous.
Exactly. It's one thing after another, and obviously, I always say the good guys are winning, and we're waking up. And I mean, all this research is just really, it's really sad to read all this over and over again. But the thing I wanted to also recap is what's your updates on the court? What are your court updates? I wanted to say, please check out Jim Fetzer's BitChute and all the websites that you have. I'll put them up.
Well, I'm back in the Court of Appeals in Wisconsin to regain control of my book and my blog. They took it the very day of the Alex Jones trial in Austin because they were going to trash me. They had a producer read an email from Paul Joseph Watson saying we got to stay as far away as possible from that batshit crazy Fetzer, which could lead people to wonder, what does that batshit crazy guy have to say about Sandy Hook. My blog was just bristling with facts proving that it had been a FEMA drill presented as mass murder to promote gun control. They did not want the public to have access. So they implemented a completely legally flawed, unprecedentedly bad takedown of my blog and also of the book, Nobody Died at Sandy Hook, which I think had been the objective of the initial lawsuit against me in the first place. But they did not do it in the manner that is specified by the laws of Wisconsin, which entail appointing a receiver who can evaluate the value of the property, and then if it's used to make money to pay off the indebtedness, it would then be returned to the original owner. And they did all this, which I believe was the ultimate objective of the lawsuit against me in the first place, which had more holes in it than Swiss cheese. Just outrageous, totally corrupt from beginning to end, where if I have the opportunity, I'm going to pursue that as well. But where they also came after me to garnish accounts improperly, violated basic statutes, made a proposal to a court that required a hearing, but where the judge went ahead and signed it without giving me the hearing. I just submitted yesterday my reply to the response to my brief challenging this whole process. So I have two cases before the Court of Appeals here in Wisconsin that, because they entail flagrant violations of the statutes of Wisconsin, and because these cases are not contaminated by political views about Sandy Hook, but are purely procedural violations, I believe I will prevail on both. And then I can go about making the book available to the public again. And meanwhile, there are other aspects of this case that warrant further legal exploration. So when you mention, I have a GiveSendGo account, givesendgo.com/funding FETZER. Anyone who thinks that what I'm doing is sufficiently meritorious to warrant a donation in any amount, small sums are just as welcome as large, please give that consideration, because that money will be used to support my legal efforts. Indeed, another aspect of the garnishing was they wanted to take funds that had been donated to me to oppose the Posner lawsuit, and it would be absurd to take that money to give to Posner. I have never had that intent. I make it explicit in the statement I give, which is not as current. I should go back to GiveSendGo and do some updating, but I assure you, any donations are going to be used to support my efforts to set things straight. And as you heard from my earlier observation about Chief Justice Roberts, State of the Nation thought it was so meritorious. They described mine as perhaps the single most important case to come before the Supreme Court in our lifetime. So I welcome. I'm doing my best. I'm just one guy, but I'm going to fight this as long and as hard as possible. And I think we may, at a certain point, find light at the end of the tunnel, a potential to reverse all the injustice that's been carried out here by the grotesque weaponization of the judicial system. You see it on a large scale with Donald Trump, on a far more modest scale, in my case, or that of Alex Jones for that matter. I mean, $1 billion award for expressing the opinion that nobody died at Sandy Hook? That's just absurd, as un-American, as unconstitutional as you get. So I just say how much I appreciate these opportunities to communicate with you and with your audience here. Because what's going on in the world today is very, very bad, very complicated, and requires a whole lot of sorting out, which is what I'm doing now. And by the way, I've replaced Michael Rivero on RBN. Michael Rivero, of course, had a very popular show called What Really Happened. He's retired now, and mine is authentic news, 5 days a week from 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 to 5 Central, 1 to 3 Pacific. And I'm really enjoying being on RBN with a 1 hour update of news analysis, very similar to what I presented here with you today. And then an hour of taking callers, and great callers coming in from all around the world. So I just say, I'm happy, very happy with that. And I continue my Revolution radio show Monday, Wednesday, Friday, noon to 2 p.m., which I'm devoting now primarily to interviews with people who are in a position to know what's going on. Yesterday, I interviewed Mike Harris, just a brilliant guy. Tomorrow, I'm interviewing a woman who's leading a lawsuit to defeat the use of directed energy weapons that target individuals. That has just been filed. So you can find all that and the shows, by the way, which are recorded on my BitChute channel, Jim FETZER. So if you can't catch them live, you have the opportunity to catch up there.
Perfect, Jim. Well, you got a lot going on, and we appreciate your a breath of fresh air. So thank you very much, and glad to hear you're so busy with all these things. Some not as fun as others, but someone's got to do it. And so God bless you. God bless the country. Thank you very much, and we appreciate everything that you do.
My great pleasure.
Thank you. Take care.